by North American Aviation, the T-6 was the last trainer that a cadet would see before earning his wings. With a 600 horsepower radial engine, take a look from the right as Bill now takes off, and let's listen to the sound of the propeller tips going supersonic at about 2,500 RPM. Bill right on the deck and accelerating now through 130 miles per hour. Up he goes now, rolling the airplane into a 4-point hesitation roll on takeoff. This airplane, believe it or not, weighs 5,500 pounds. Only 600 horsepower. Some of the maneuvers that you're going to see Bill Leff flying today are actually ones that require him to have 2 hands on the stick. Bill Leff has been flying in air shows. This is his actually his 34th season flying air shows. He's performed over 1,000 performances in this Texan. Flying the barrel roll, rolling around an imaginary point in the sky, endeavoring to start and stop at the same altitude and airspeed using coordination of the stick, the throttle, and the rudder. All his control surfaces working hard to do that. All right, now coming back in from the right, Bill Leff, who, let's see, as I recall, just turned 50 years old just last June. And his 60th birthday, got to attend his birthday party up at his home in Dayton, Ohio, and watching his dress this beautiful, super slow roll across the line. And since that time, he has flown over 200 types of aircraft. He's a former airline pilot. He's a former airline pilot simulator instructor. He has flown aircraft in government contracts with very, very sophisticated sensors and testing equipment aboard for the United States Air Force. And he gets his big look from flying this big old 5,500-pound Texan. The Texan has been flying since 1939. And, this is in 1939 or 1938. Gonna have to get straightened out on that. Since the Texan's been around. And depending on whose book you're reading, and the history books are not all in agreement on this, upwards of 22,000 Texans and their variants have been manufactured. They were flown by the United States Army Air Force, that was the T-6. The Royal Air Force and the Royal Canadian Air Force used the aircraft as well, and they called it the Harbor. And these airplanes were being delivered to the Royal Canadian Air Force prior to America's entry into World War II. Neutrality laws made it illegal to fly a warplane across the border from a neutral country to a combatant country, because Canada, as part of the United Kingdom, was at war with Germany prior to December 8th, 1941. These airplanes had to be flown to the border, landed, stopped, pushed across the border, restarted, and flown to training bases in Canada. Well, U.S. and Canadian customs officials up in Hampton, Maine, got a little creative. What they did was land the airplanes, stopped them, politically moved the border temporarily to the tail of the aircraft, started them up again and flew them onto their bases. That's how they got around. They got a lot more planes up there to the Royal Canadian Air Force. Diving down now, climbing up. Watch him as he gets to the top. Over the top, tilts his head back, looks at the runway and looks at the beautiful brown slope. How about a nice round of applause for Bill Leff. Last night's show, he flew his Starfire night sky show with lights flashing all over the airplane and fireworks on the wingtips. It was really, really fun. T-40, the British Purchasing Commission, went to the president of North American Aviation, Dutch Kindleberger, and said, listen, we need some more fighters, we need some more warhawks. The way that your company, North American Aviation, builds these Harvard trainers for us, would you build Tomahawks, courtesy P-40 Tomahawks or Warhawks under license, which means that North American Aviation would have had to retool and get all the information and production line information from Curtiss and build somebody else's airplane. Well, Dutch Kindleberger said, we don't want to give us 120 days. Well, they had in their hip pocket some information that they'd gotten on trips to Germany back in 1938 about a very, very special wing known as the laminar flow wing, with a similar shaped top and bottom. It was a very fast wing that the Germans had knowledge of. So Dutch Kindleberger got together with his guys, his chief designers, Edgar Schmid, Ray Rice, and Lee Atwood. They had a little meeting and they got back to the British Purchasing Commission and said, folks, you give us 120 days, we'll build you a completely new airplane. And reluctantly, the British Purchasing Commission, on behalf of the Royal Air Force, said okay. And in 117 days, the first Mustang came off the line in 1940. Goes into holds it there, goes across the top, and rolls it. Oh, there's the gear that just appeared. I guess he put the gear up or down or whatever, but he certainly did extend it. We'll be coming back into land here shortly. The first Mustangs had Allison V12 engines in them. And they did not perform particularly well at altitude.
What I'm saying is,
before we saw Sean Carroll fly earlier this morning, that the British decided that they would put in the Mustang Howler. And North American's Mustang with the Merlin power became the aircraft that many believe was the finest fighter aircraft of World War II. At least that's what those who flew it think. There were others who felt maybe the P-47 or the P-38 was better, but those who flew the Mustang really loved it. All based on the great design that North American put into this airplane, flown by Bill Leff of Dayton, Ohio, as he slows the airplane down to some 70 miles per hour. Remember, this is just a 600 horsepower engine. It's got 5,500 pounds of weight, and he's slowing it down, pointing it into the wind, going slower and slower every second, pulling that nose up for the Texan High Alpha Pass. Working the power like a crazy guy, that's great stuff. An incredible pilot. He's been flying corporate aircraft as well for 30-some years. West Wind's Learjets. He's even made 4 trips in his aircraft across the Gulf of Mexico. And you may have seen Bill Leff's airplane on our air boss, Jim Tucherone, knew I was going there when I said you may have seen. Because just last July, wasn't it just last July? Yeah, last summer, Bill was going from the Peoria, Illinois Air Show up to the big aviation celebration at Oshkosh, Wisconsin for the EAA, Experimental Aircraft Association fly-in. His son was in the back seat. And while they were right near Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, the engine seized up and quit with the propeller straight up and straight down, stopped dead. 2 minutes later, he would have been on over top of Lake Winnebago and had to put it in the water. But Bill Leff, in this very airplane, decided he was going to put it down on a highway. He was doing fine until he saw 2 police cars under him. Bill Leff, running out of options, running out of airspeed, running out of altitude, bounced his airplane in between the 2 cop cars, got enough altitude to go over the second police car, and landed on the highway, and it's all on the dashboard cam. So you can go watch it on YouTube. A phenomenal job. If there hadn't been a road sign, he wouldn't have damaged the airplane at all. And had to have the wing replaced. But what a great pilot he is as he does his roll and sets up for approach to landing. I hope you'll join me as we give a great congratulatory applause to Mr. Bill Leff. All right, he's not going to land now. I think we're going to get one last photo pass. So if you've got your cameras ready, this is a great chance to see one of the great painted, unpainted, and highly polished T-6s around. That supersonic sound. You know, some of these T-6s were actually pressed back into service after World War II as T-6G